Okay, hi everybody. I hope you can hear me. I'm sorry I cannot be with you. Thank you, Ignacio and Lewis, for inviting me. So I'm going to talk to you about humans to Mars in the age of AI. Uh, this is a slide that you will see completed over time, but the basics first. How human biology, of course, limits our access to space. Humans to Mars, because of the distance involved and the time, therefore, that it would take to cover the distance, requires massive amounts of life support system and supplies to be taken on a trip to Mars, which is why there's a high cost fundamentally to a human mission to Mars compared to, say, going to the moon. Um, so early robots have, of course, been a way to explore Mars at much lower cost, but they're doing it at a slower pace. And it's not just the pace that's slower. There's also the overall productivity and completeness of the investigation that's less than if we had humans there, of course. But in any case, sending humans to Mars is not really a competition with robots. It's these are different phases, and humans would need to go for things that are just beyond scientific productivity as well. But I want to share with you a few some background thoughts. First of all, this is a map showing you the all 17 intended landings that have taken place on Mars so far. Of these 17, only 10 were successful. The red dots are failures, the green dots are successes, the yellows are mitigated successes, mitigated failures. Uh, and you can see that of the 10 successes, 9 were US and one was Chinese. And that happened, that's actually the latest landing in 2021. So far, in terms of surface mobility robotics, we have this array of systems. The Soviet Union sent the Mars Prop M little tethered rover to Mars back in 1971, but it never deployed because the mother craft essentially had hard landings and did not survive for more than a few seconds. So the first tethered rover never really deployed. The first small rover was Sojourner, and then followed by Spirit and Opportunity. Then we had Curiosity, which is still running, and lately Perseverance with the Ingenuity helicopter. Meanwhile, China sent a large rover and successfully landed in its first try on Mars. And so that was an important success for China. And of course, in the middle here, you have a future Mars astronaut who is the only fictional character in this scene. The voyage to Mars is really a big challenge. Here are sort of two classical scenarios. I'll start with the one on the right, opposition class missions. They allow you to have an overall short round trip to Mars of order 600 days. You depart the Earth, but then you spend most of your time in these scenarios in deep space. Your stay on Mars could be anywhere from no stay, you just do a flyby, to a stay of up to 90 days or so, 3 months. But typically, these are short stay missions with long interplanetary segments. On the left-hand side, you have conjunction class missions. So those are sort of the more typical scenario that I think we will be using once we have an infrastructure set up on Mars. It takes you about 6 months to get to Mars. It's an abbreviated Hohmann transfer. And then you are committed to staying something like 18 months on Mars before the Earth and Mars would position themselves for you to have an economical return to the Earth again. And you fly back to the Earth in 6 months. So the problem with the latter class of missions, the conjunction class missions, is that the overall duration is 900 odd days. So that's essentially a 2.5 year voyage. But you get to spend a lot of time at your destination on Mars. In this case, 180 days, which is substantial. 18 months, which is substantial. It's a year and a half. So in terms of the reality of the surface for Mars, this is why we want robotic systems, at the very least, to assist us, is because there are a few good things going for humans, but there are really a series of problems. Good things is that the day is 24 hours and 37 minutes. There's plenty of water on Mars, mostly in the form of ice. There's ice, there are minerals in the regolith, and gravity on Mars is 0.38 g, which is generally believed to be better than none. And so this should actually help us not be too ill from low gravity on Mars. Uh, in terms of the things that are bad for you, I've listed on the right the top 5 things that will kill you in chronological order of cause of death if you were to venture onto the surface of Mars unprotected. The very low surface pressure, 10 millibars, will kill you within seconds. You would essentially um, experience violent decompression. All the nitrogen and oxygen in your bloodstream would boil off, and so you would essentially fizz to death. Second, if you survive that, the atmosphere of Mars is toxic. It's made of CO2. You need oxygen, O2, to breathe. And so you would die of hypoxia, in other words, insufficient oxygen to the brain, and you're dead within minutes. If that didn't kill you, then the frigid temperatures would. The average temperature on Mars is minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's minus 63 degrees Celsius. So you are dead within hours if you were exposed just to those temperatures. If that didn't kill you, then the dust on Mars is a real problem. It's very fine grained, so it's going to clog the pores of your lungs. It's abrasive, more abrasive, almost as abrasive as a lunar regolith, it's believed, although we don't have a lot of data on abrasiveness for lunar dust, for Martian dust. And it is toxic. It's full of perchlorates and superoxides, which are thought to be, which are known to be pretty bad for you. The perchlorates, for example, will attack your thyroid. You're dead within weeks. And so in the movie The Martian, for example, the novel, that doesn't work. The guy is growing potatoes out of Martian dirt that has been brought into the habitat. You would be exposed to all that dust and you'd be dead within weeks. So that the guy would not have survived the way he purportedly did in the story. Somewhere in between, you would die from lack of liquid water and food, but basically the dust will kill you within weeks. Then finally, ionizing radiation, which often comes to the top of the things we worry about, mainly because there's very little you can do against it other than burying yourself. It's from galactic cosmic rays and solar particle events that will kill you if it does over the course of months to years, but it's hard to shield against. This is a chart showing you a lot of detail about radiation, but just bear in mind that on the right you have an NRC chart, and the only thing to pay attention to here is the column, the green column on the left, the tall one. That is essentially at 5,000 millirems, the annual nuclear worker dose limit that's allowed in the US. So if you work in a nuclear power plant, 5,000 millirems is what you're allowed to be exposed to per year. That tall green column becomes that little green square there at the lower left when you compare it to the radiation dosages that you get on a journey to Mars. So the 4 scenarios for journeys to Mars I'm showing you on the left is either just a round trip, in which case it's all dark blue. The orange segments are the stays on Mars. And you have different times of travel to Mars at times of solar maximum activity, minimum activity, and also average. Solar minimum activity is the worst because that's when galactic cosmic rays are the worst. In any case, on a journey to Mars and back, you are exposed to anywhere from 10 to 30 times the annual maximum dose of a nuclear worker. So that's actually equivalent to a career's dose of radiation. But the problem, of course, is on a journey to Mars, you don't get exposed to that over the course of a 30-year career. You get exposed to that over the course of 2.5 years. And so that is, it's not so much the amount of radiation that's a concern as much as the rate at which you get exposed to it on a journey to Mars. So nevertheless, there have been new developments. NASA has a Moon to Mars plan. Meanwhile, Mars Starship is under development. Nuclear thermal propulsion is under development. There are Mars drones in the works to follow in the wake of Ingenuity's incredible success on Mars. Of course, we now know that China can land on Mars and is also planning to do a Mars sample return and presumably send humans there. So humans to Mars is becoming programmatically planned again. Starship is under development, and I myself am working on a Mars chopper mission concept with connections with JPL, of course, and also NASA Ames. This is a mission that in this scenario would visit and explore the giant volcano my teammates and I found just last year on Mars. It's an ancient giant volcano, but there are also glaciers nearby, at least the remains of a glacier, a relic glacier, lava flows, uh, presumably ice deposits, which is a bit surprising because this is a site that's near the equator of Mars. Anyway, that's one of several Mars helicopter or Mars chopper concepts that are in the works. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from Maruthi about the challenges of flying robotic rotorcraft like this on Mars without GPS, for example, for positioning and things like that. The final point I want to make is sort of the bigger picture, the context in which our humans going to Mars fits in. We are at the dawn of the age of AI, of course, and the emergence of the artificial human in sort of a broad, loosely defined sense. A few things to note: Starship won't be ready for a while. So it's not like we're going to be on Mars anytime soon, we humans. The next generation robotics is also making big progress, and it's not your grandmother's robotics. Will it still make sense to send humans to Mars? Are some of the questions we are wondering, or to what extent? And also, what is exactly the role of future artificial astronauts? So a quick word about the SpaceX Mars architecture. Uh, it's actually really complex. We're still at the maturation stage of the first scenario on the far left, which is to launch a Starship into orbit. Eventually, the Starship that will land on Mars, once it's launched into Earth orbit, will have to be refueled in orbit, which is something we've never done before, with methane and oxygen brought up by other Starship launches. And that's the sort of top figure on the near the center left that you see. Ship flies into Earth orbit, and then tanker refill ship and returns to the Earth. The ship then, once it's full, will launch to Mars, and at some point it acquires its crew, who board it by another rendezvous between a Starship and the main Starship that goes to Mars. Once it gets to Mars, it has not enough fuel left to insert itself into orbit. So it has to plow straight into the Martian atmosphere. It's a direct entry. Very challenging, very risky. And you have to, of course, meanwhile, plan to aim for a specific location. Because once you land on Mars, which is shown on the lower right, you then have to refuel with fuel that is made on Mars. So you want to convert the Martian water, H2O and CO2, into methane, CH4 and O2. Refuel your Starship on Mars. Otherwise, it cannot come back, and you don't come back either. And then it launches from Mars on a direct return to Earth trajectory, which of course it cannot miss either. And then it lands on Earth, hopefully at the Cape or down in Texas. In any case, there are lots of things that have yet to be matured in this whole chain of events, not to mention ISRU on Mars. And the point is, even though Starship is making spectacular progress at times, we're still far off from sending humans on a round trip to Mars with this system. Meanwhile, I want to point to a challenge that's very important that we still face with the future spacesuit for Mars. This is on the left, the state-of-the-art spacesuit. It's the Space Shuttle and Space Station EMU spacesuit, the EVA mobility unit. You can see that it's already a pretty lean and mean spacesuit, but it weighs on Earth 300 pounds. 300 pounds. The Apollo spacesuit weighed a little less. It had fewer redundancies to it. It weighed approximately 220 pounds on the moon. But a 300-pound spacesuit, if you take that to the moon, that's still fine because lunar gravity is 6 times less than on the Earth. So 300 pounds divided by 6, that's 50 pounds. You have a heavy backpack, if you will, with the spacesuit you're wearing, but you're still able to move around. If you take a 300-pound spacesuit to Mars, where gravity is 38% of what it is on Earth, the felt weight of the spacesuit is about 125 pounds. So it is way too heavy for you to do any field work. So the bottom line is that we do not have a spacesuit ready for Mars, and that's a big problem for humans, at least. And even apparently for Lewis's plan to put an android in a spacesuit, which I love. So here's the solution we found based on our field work in the Arctic, which is to resolve the spacesuit weight problem by creating a spacesuit that has inherently less autonomy. Instead of having a typical 8 hours of life support systems on the suit, we're going to take out of the spacesuit the three most heavy things: the oxygen tanks, the water tanks, and the batteries, at least part of them. And we leave in the spacesuit only small oxygen tanks, small batteries, small water tanks. But meanwhile, we equipped or associate the astronaut with a nimble robotic ATV. And that ATV carries extra oxygen, extra batteries, extra water, which can then recharge your backpack as you drive or park. And then now you have, with this combination of astronaut in spacesuit with an ATV, you have a real EVA system that is workable for Mars. So the spacesuit has to be lightened. You have to bring the spacesuit down from its 300-pound mass to about 150 pounds. And you can do that once again by taking out the oxygen, water, and batteries. But then you, of course, end up with a spacesuit with less autonomy in itself. So the spacesuit would have just 2 hours of autonomy. The spacesuit and ATV combo about 10 hours. And then the ATV, however, is a smart ATV. And this is where roboticists like all of you come in. We want something that's voice and gesture controlled, but also self-driving. It has to shadow the astronaut, in other words, follow you. You step off the ATV to go pick up rocks, it should follow you so that you don't have to carry the rocks back to the rover. You just dump them there. In case you run out of life support, it's right there for you to plug in, and you can recharge your life support. You still travel with not just alone, but with another buddy on his or her own ATV. And if that thing breaks down, then they can ride back with you by getting rid of that suitcase in the back and sitting facing backwards. In any case, SpaceX has announced that its first starships on Mars might actually include not humans, but just an early version of the Optimus robot to gather data and prepare the ground for humans. I don't know if Optimus will be ready for the task by then, although once again, Starship is not quite landing on Mars yet. So, and in any case, Optimus doesn't need to come back. So that's, of course, a big advantage for sending androids early. I just want to end with this chart. This shows you on the x-axis the years from the 1960s to the 22nd century. And then on the left, the robot human-like performance in percentage. And of course, everybody knows that how quickly robotics, AI, and Android integration will make progress. This varies depending on people's opinions, and the steepness of this curve that I see, or even the shape of the curve, is subject to interpretation and discussion. But this is what I'm suggesting here, just for the sake of argument, as a current trend that I find not too shocking. So the curve shows you essentially the progress over time of our robot human-like performance. And at some stage in a few decades, we will reach approximately 100%, both in terms of the artificial intelligence, which then becomes similar to that of a human, which is artificial general intelligence. And at the same time, that's integrated to an android that essentially can move around the house like that guy who was running around earlier. So that's when we have an android who's essentially indistinguishable from a human. So the problem or the opportunity presented by androids, of course, is that they are much more robust. They don't need life support in the same way we do to clear the ground for Mars and help us explore the place. But of course, it's a system that's going to be maturing over the next several decades, maybe 30 years or so, at least. And so how do you plan missions to Mars in this context? Once again, Starship is not going to come online, we don't think, until the 2030s in its ability to really do a round trip to Mars at the earliest. And then meanwhile, we're trying to plan what it will do or what the early humans will do while this AI is under huge and fast development. So the point of this chart is to say that in the early days of the Von Braun expedition planning or the Space Exploration Initiative, it was all about humans assisted with limited robotic capabilities. But now that the that androids with artificial general intelligence and then beyond with super intelligence are on the horizon, it becomes much more challenging to figure out what's the best way and when we should go to Mars. Um, and and so that's something that I'd be happy to discuss with everybody. Thank you.